All right. I want to welcome everyone to the You Matter Show podcast. I'm Mark Bradinsky. I'm the host of this podcast. I want to go over my mission and movement real quick, then we'll introduce my guest, who I'm happy to have here, Rob Commodari. But my mission is I'm now positively impacting the lives of 1 billion people. So that's my goal. That's my why. That came to me about 6 or 7 years ago. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And my movement is a You Matter movement because I believe that everybody matters. Everyone is a miracle, a masterpiece, and a hero, as is my first guest here, Rob Commodari. Rob is like a brother to me. I've known Rob now for about 11 years. He's in my mastermind group. He's a husband, father, author, podcaster, has a very popular podcast called Chiseled because we are all a work in progress. Right, Rob?
Yes, sir.
And so I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm elated to have you join me as my first guest on this video version of the You Matter Show podcast. I launched it last year, but really just did kind of monologues. I just shared content that I was reading, learning about, listening to, just as a way to impact people. But now I want to bring other people on to show them that they matter, and then they can talk about why they believe they matter and others matter as well. So, Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I'm excited to be here too, and congratulations on this epic launch for your You Matter movement. So I'm really honored and flattered to be one of your guests here today. Thanks so much, buddy.
I like the word epic. Thank you for that. Awesome.
There you go.
So you're awesome. So I want to start with two questions because I think this tells a lot about people. And I have a blog called Storytelling for Business. And I tell stories of agents, leaders, and home office people at this company that I work with, U.S. Health Advisors, and I've done about 130 stories for them. And I always start off with these two questions when I interview them, which is, what would you consider your greatest challenge and greatest accomplishment in life so far?
Thinking about the greatest challenge piece, there's so many challenges we go through in life. And I think one of the biggest and greatest challenges I go through is in my head every day is like, do I matter? Sometimes, we can have a healthy self-esteem and feel good about ourselves, but I think everybody questions at times if they're worthy or if they're, worth doing anything or whatever the case is. It's just, I think we all struggle with that. So I know over time, like as I've increased my awareness, I noticed there might be times when I'm more insecure than others. And because when you're a kid, you probably ignored it, didn't know it or whatever. So I think that's probably one of my greatest challenges. It's just because I know it's coming, I know it's there. And then you just got to constantly coach yourself. And that's what I do. So that's as far as the greatest challenge. The greatest accomplishment, man, there's a lot there because you think about getting married, going to college, graduating, having kids, having a successful business. And all that is great. I think for me, one of the biggest accomplishments in my life is as I've grown to learn and discover and become more aware of who I am, what's going on around me, what goes in my head, to recognize these things. Because I wrote that book, and it's all about awareness. And I believe awareness is the foundation to everything in life and growing and whatnot. So when we talk about the greatest accomplishment, I think it's just getting to know myself better at a deeper level.
Hence the book that you wrote, and that's right behind you, that poster, Better Than You Think, right? So developing an awareness for a more fulfilling life. You just talked about that's the reason that you think that that's a big accomplishment in your life. And
I do. And if I can give you kudos for that, Mr. Bradinsky or Mark, and that was a poster that you produced, you made, and you gave it to me as a gift. So I'm very grateful for that. As you see, every podcast I do, that's right behind us. So thank you for that, buddy.
It's a great book, and I'm proud of you for doing it. We had to push you to do that for a few years in our mastermind group, but you finally got it done. So that was certainly an accomplishment in your life, right?
Absolutely. It was big.
Wait, so just to give you a little background, the mastermind group is made up of myself, Rob, and Mark Palak. It was also Pete Kolash. He was in there for a few years. And Rob and Mark and I meet every other Friday to go over our 3 banner goals for the year. And then we have a Monday morning call for 30 minutes to talk about the weekend and what we're going to do for the week. Really, what are you going to try to accomplish that week to fulfill those banner goals? So I believe that one of the reasons that we believe we matter is that foundation, is to work on yourself, because happiness is an internal game, not an external game. You can't need things. You might want them, but you can't need them. The only thing you need is you. And a lot of people don't believe that they can be more than they ever were before. Get me back, or take me back to your childhood, though. I mean, you grew up in a big family. Did that hurt your self-esteem? There were times, I'm sure, then that you didn't feel that you mattered much because you're part of such a large tribe there in your home. Tell us about your childhood and how that went and how it affected your mindset.
Well, it's interesting because I'm one of 7 kids, grew up in a 745 square foot house, Northeast Baltimore City. And my dad was working 3 jobs to support us. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, as you can imagine, with 7 kids. So, and I was the number 3 of the 7. So kind of in the middle. And they always say when you're in the middle, I guess you got stuff going on. But anyway, so it was interesting. And for whatever reason, I knew, I remember at a very early age, I'm going back to maybe age 10 or 11, that I was motivated to work and earn money because I knew it wasn't going to be given to me. And so you had to hustle that way. But I remember, because we talked about some of this earlier, and I remember I was about 5 or 6 years old, Mark. And I remember we had a birthday party. It was my sister, my sister and I were, they call us Irish twins because we're 364 days apart in our birthdays. And so we had a combination birthday party. And we invited all these people. The party was at a friend's house, not our own house, because as you can imagine, we couldn't fit everybody. And so one person after another kept coming up with a gift, and it was for my sister, for my sister, for my sister, for my sister. And finally, one person came up with 2 gifts, and it was a game, it was a board game, sheets and ladders or something like that.
Shoots and ladders.
Shoots and ladders, right? Yeah. And I'm like,
Shoots and ladders is a whole other game.
So I remember getting it, and I remember I'm like, holy cow, nobody came here for me. And I remember that point, like, did I even matter? I remember that vividly. And does it carry itself on? I mean, if as a 5, 6-year-old, do you get over that? You would say yes, but I know there's situations, even today, whether you're in a group of people, you're out in an environment, and you question if you say something, did it bring any value, or is it even worth saying anything? Because am I even worth being heard? That crosses your mind. It does.
I've got news for you. It does, because I've decided to invest in some therapy and counseling just to get to know myself better. And I'm learning that what happens in your childhood, you carry forward, even though you might think you do, you don't. Because we kind of bury things and we forget about them. And the way you were raised and the environment you were raised in definitely affects the way you think, the way you act, the way you react to other people. It's very interesting. So, you know what, like our friend and mentor, Darren Hardy, says we're all just tall, wounded children, right? So we carry forward what we learned about when we were young, and now we're just taller, but we still have that childlike piece of us, good and bad, that we walk around with. So that would lead into my next question is, do you think that you've carried anything from the past that makes you feel like sometimes that you don't matter, that there's this, and we just talked about this before we started, the imposter syndrome, when you enter something that's either new or maybe even something that you've done before, but you think you're not prepared for it, and you step in front of, because you're a really good speaker, right? You step in front of a crowd of 100 people and go, I know I can do this, but I'm afraid of what I'm going to talk about. It's not going to resonate with people. They're not going to listen. Do I really matter? Does anybody really care about what it is I have to say?
Yeah, it still happens. Like you said, first of all, I think the first question is, do I believe, and are there examples of me knowing that it's carried itself forward from when I was a child? And the answer is yes to that. It's just, you don't realize it might be from that past. But there are times, again, we're out in a crowd and say they're talking politics, and I don't know squat about politics, right? I'm not involved in it. And everybody's having this conversation. You want to say one thing, you're like, maybe I should just keep my mouth shut because what I say is not going to matter, right? So, things like that happen. And there, you mentioned about getting up in front of people and speaking. So, like, I'm confident in my ability to speak. I'm confident in my ability to share a story. But there's always that point in time when you are about to deliver a speech, about to get up on stage and deliver a speech, where you get the pregame jitters, right? It's like the batter goes up into the batter's box getting ready to take that first pitch. You always see him with the bat on his shoulder, and he takes that deep breath, right? And exhales. And so I get those jitters before that. And the worry or the insecurity is something to the effect, is what I'm getting ready to say or deliver going to matter to them? Is it going to connect to them? Because I think sometimes there's fine line here when you want to deliver a message and you want to look good, you want to sound good, you want to be good. And that's all about me, 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 me. And then you have to realize what you're delivering, the message you're delivering is not about you, it's for them. And I think if we can make that mental exchange in our mind that make it not about us and more about them, I really think it becomes a different, like more relaxing, if you will, delivery of the presentation, because it's not about what I look like, it's about how I can connect. And when you do that, I think it comes from the heart more so. And that, when you said it to me one time, when you speak to the heart, anyone who has one listens. So I'm quoting you on that one, buddy.
And I'm quoting that. Well, that was something I came up with when I watched my oldest daughter, Sophie, give a talk at her bar mitzvah. So after I listened to that, that's what the quote I put in my email. That's at the end of every email that I have, right? When you speak from the heart, everyone who has one will listen, right? They'll hear you. A fellow podcaster of ours, Ed Milet, that we both listen to, he talks about this a lot. He says you have to meet people where they are. And, he said he was sitting at a table with a group of other big names in our circle of personal growth and self-improvement. And they all were worried about what they're going to talk about, what the topic was. And Ed said to them, everyone in that audience is going through something. Could be a divorce, could be money problems, could be some type of relationship, could be something with their child, could be something inside of them, some health issue. Because, my line, everyone you will ever meet in your entire life is going through something. So you're right. When you speak, it has to be about them and not about you. And that's why I believe everybody matters, because we're all going through things in any given moment. And so we judge people, though, on how they show us themselves, even though we don't know what's behind them. So when you learn someone's story, which is why I love my storytelling business too, and I want to do this podcast, because everybody matters. It's just what they're showing you, the mask they wear is not always who they really are. And there's a lot going on behind that. Just like, I'm in the insurance business. You pick up the phone, you make a phone call, and someone is rude to you on the other end of the phone. They're not being rude to you because they don't like you. They're being rude to you because of the 6 other things that are happening in their life that you don't know about. And we all have to give grace to those people. That's why opinions are so difficult for people to handle, because opinions are about education and experience, and mine is not the same as yours. I didn't grow up in a house with 7 other siblings, right? I didn't live where you lived. I didn't have the parents you had. I didn't go to the same school you did. I'm not the same religion you are. So why would my opinion be the same as yours? And that's why we have to give people grace and realize that everyone does matter. I do believe that God doesn't make a mistake and that we're here for a reason. I know you do too, because I know you're a very spiritual person. So talk a little bit about that and your faith and how that affects your self-confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah, if I could go back to one thing you said, you talked about the mask, and people don't always show up with what's really going on or something they have going on. And you made me think about when you said that, the whole Facebook thing, because a lot of us put things on Facebook, the good things, it's the good thing, the good thing, the good thing. But behind the good thing, is there a cry for help sometimes? Is there a cry to say, hey, I just want to be heard. I just want to be seen. And I just want to matter, right? I really believe that happens. And then we all get caught up. Oh, I got 357 likes. I got 67 comments. We all get caught up in that. And I think when we personally get caught up in that, are we asking ourselves if we matter based on the amount of likes and comments we get? I think that happens.
It's fake book, right? It's not really what's going on in your life.
I never heard that. I
know you've heard me say that before. It's fake book because it's not real life. It's just you're putting your best self out there, which is fine. But what's going on behind the curtain, if you were to pull the curtain back, you'll see people's real lives.
Yeah.
And you said it perfectly. I mean, we all wear this invisible sign around our neck that says "Make me feel important." In fact, William James, a psychologist and sociologist, philosopher, he said that the deepest principle in life for everyone is the craving to be appreciated. So that's why I know this You Matter movement is important, because we really all feel that way, and we're all here for a reason. We're all here for a purpose. It's like what Darren Hardy says, that you should do or try to do all you can with all you have been given.
Yeah.
And for each of us, it's different. It's different. I mean, one person's, goal or what they want to do in life could just be to be a good parent. And then we look at them and go, well, they're not doing enough. But, we're not respecting their why. And there are people that could do a lot more. I think most people could do a lot more with what they've been given. They just haven't created a foundation to build themselves up, to be able to realize that inside of them is something a lot more than what they are actually living every day of their lives. And I know you take that to the next level. You wouldn't be doing all the things you're doing, right? You wouldn't be writing books, doing podcasts, giving speeches, trying to inspire your team, trying to be a great father to your children, a good husband to your wife. I mean, I respect and really admire the person that you are and what you bring to the world. But you don't need my validation to believe that you matter. That's the thing.
Very important comment there. You're right. And I think a lot of us lean into other people's affirmation or confirmation to say something to know if we matter or not. And, to go back to your question about the faith, where's my faith fall into play here? I think it depends where people, you say meet people where they are, right? So I can make a comment right now based on my depth of spirituality and might not connect with somebody because they might not be there and on that same spot on their journey or same part of the path of their journey. But like when I'm giving, whether I'm writing the book, doing the podcast, giving a presentation, there are moments of doubt every time. There's no question about it. We talked about it earlier, the imposter syndrome. Like I'm not worthy enough, smart enough, or who's going to want to listen to my stuff, right? Those are the questions you ask yourself. But over time, I think I've gotten better. I'm not a master of it yet by any stretch of imagination, but I think I've gotten better at when I'm getting ready to do something, even when I have those doubts or those insecurities. A lot of times the prayer or the coaching myself, part of it is like, I acknowledge the fact that insecurity shows up. It's like, hey, younger Rob, or hey, Mr. Insecurity, thanks for showing up. I know you're there, but now you can leave. And now it's time to go out and inspire and impact and improve the lives of other people to show them that they matter. And going back to what I said earlier, when you make it about them, because everybody has a craving to be appreciated, everybody has a craving to be acknowledged, and everybody has a craving to know that they matter, they might not voice it out because they think, if I need people to know that I matter, if I need to know that I matter, is that an insecurity? We all want to matter. We all want to matter to some extent. So I put it in God's hands now. I do a better job of putting it in his hands. And I'll say, hey, God, it's going to be what it's going to be. And I do my part and let him take it the rest of the way.
Good. I mean, you have a higher power that's supporting, we all do, a higher power that's supporting us and guiding us. And you're right. When you feel that doubt, when you feel that lack of self-esteem, you have to absorb it. Embrace it. And like you said, accept it and move on instead of try to fight it. We're all in our mastermind group this year. We're fighting resistance, right? So you have to accept that it's part of who you are and say, okay, I'm going to move you over here. And now I'm going to step out on stage or whatever it is that you're doing in your life and go be your best self, knowing that that's still there, but you're going to rise above it and you're going to be exactly who you're meant to be. It's not an easy thing to do. So how do you believe you can help other people matter?
Well, first,
believe that they matter.
Yeah, I think it's first by being the example and trying to live that example. And I've told you this before, and it's even in my book. I've always made the comment. I kind of say it jokingly, but I mean it sincerely. It's like, when I die and I'm laying in my coffin, and you, Palak, or somebody in my family's giving my eulogy, and if that person up there dares to say, man, it's a shame Rob's gone too soon, he had so much potential in his life, I'm going to jump out of my casket and run up there and choke that person because I want to be out of gas, right? And I don't mean tired out of gas. I want to be out of gas, meaning I used every bit and ounce of gifts and abilities that God's given me to do the best I can for others. And so if you're the example and you're going out and whether it's a speech, a book, a podcast, or just telling stories, or even just having conversations with people and being present in that conversation and asking questions from curiosity to that person, they're going to feel that they matter when you come from that perspective, right? Or that angle. And we talk about like going out, being bold, fighting resistance. The more you do it, like this podcast yourself, I'm sure you've had resistance with this podcast.
No, not at all.
Right. And there's some self-doubt that creeps up. In fact, when you first came out with this, I'm going to impact the lives of 1 billion people, you said it with conviction. But I'm willing to bet that there's people out there say, who the hell does he think he is? A billion people? Yeah, one person at a time, and every person they say knows 250, 265, 285 people. And as you continue to do this, I believe one day you're going to impact and inspire the lives of a billion people. So if you keep doing what you're doing and leading by example, and I keep doing what I'm doing and leading by example, and and being vulnerable and transparent, saying, look, we have our own insecurities. We have these idiosyncrasies that we need to be affirmed. We need to be heard. And we express that with others, then they say to themselves, wow, it's okay to have that insecurity. It's okay to know I'm having a down moment or a low self-worth moment, but I know I just got to fight through it. And I think if we keep doing that, it's going to help people.
That's a great answer. It is the consistency and persistency of continuing to do what it is that we believe is right and we believe is the very best version of ourselves to inspire other people to realize that they can be that too. Not that we're there, right? We're all a work in progress, right? We're all being chiseled. And I do want you to talk about your podcast as well and tell people, why you started that and what it's all about. I want you to promote that. You can talk about your book and also the next book you have coming up, which is going to be released this week.
Yeah, I mean, you start with the podcast, I guess. Then
Sure.
Go there. Yeah. So I was contemplating doing a podcast for a while, and then about almost 2 years ago now, I was given a presentation on Zoom during COVID, and I was just giving the presentation, and I said to the audience, I said, "Look, I'm not the end all say all here. I'm just a work in progress." And I did that. I had 2 presentations back to back on a Thursday and a Friday, and then on a Saturday morning, I was listening to a little clip, and the woman speaking, she says, "I'm just a work in progress." So 3 times in 3 days, the words were spoken or even heard. And I went right soon after that. I sat down in my chair. I call it my prayer chair over here. I sit down in my chair and I was meditating and praying. All of a sudden, I just got this energy, this vision of a half chiseled statue because it was a work in progress. And the words kept on playing in my head, work in progress, work in progress, work in progress. And I'm like, okay, I guess God's telling me, hey, I want you to do a podcast. You're going to call it Chisel because everybody's work in progress. And the idea was to interview people, and really at first I thought was just to be a conduit to share everybody else's story. But in the process of sharing people's story and asking the questions and learning their stories, I said to myself, oh my God, God's working on me. He's chiseling me in the process of going through this process. As I learned from other people, I was growing and I was getting chiseled as well. So that's been it'll be 2 years in April. And it's been an awesome journey. I love it. And it's just to share people's story and impact others.
And like you said, you learn so much from it because people share their stories, and then you learn more about yourself and you learn more about the world by hearing what other people have to say and their journeys. And it inspires you to believe that you really can do anything, because when someone tells their story, it changes your perspective on who they are. Because even if you knew them before, when you hear what really makes them tick and the struggles they've gone through, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I didn't realize that. So you either are inspired or have empathy, and you go, wow, this person has a big life. Even though they might not be living that life necessarily, they've had a lot going on, because we all have this journey we go through, and there's going to be trials and tribulations, successes, happiness, failures. It's all part of a bigger story. So the fact that you're doing this and the people that you interview share their stories to make other people realize that they matter. They do. Yeah. I think that's really, at the end of the day, that's the concept, because we all want to feel like we are more than who we walk around being who we show ourselves to the world that we are.
There's you mentioned a couple minutes ago about meeting people where they are. And how can you meet somebody where they are if you don't know where they've been or you don't know what they're thinking? So the idea is, by asking people questions, you understand where they are, and then you can meet them where they are instead of judging people like we usually do sometimes. We have that first impression, right? We judge people. But getting to know a person allows you to better meet them where they are.
And whether you're writing it down in a blog, on a book, doing a podcast, it's really, stories are what define our lives. And there's a message I keep on my desk that your struggle will be the story that the world will fall in love with.
Yeah.
Because you share your scars, not your wounds. Wounds are complaining. And sometimes wounds are big and you need to talk about them. But the scars how you overcame the hurt and the pain and whatever happened to you. That's where we all learn from. That's what really makes us love you, because one thing that'll make you matter is sharing your vulnerability. And you're
Yeah.
really good with that, especially in our mastermind group. We do that all the time. I mean, you, I, and Palak know each other like there's no tomorrow. And we met 11 years ago, and you guys are my brothers. I knew nothing about you. You knew nothing about me. And now that we share, because you can't be in the mastermind group and just talk about business, because everything affects everything. So the fact we've gotten to know each other so well, our vulnerability is what makes us attractive to each other.
Yeah, and it's a big piece for all of us to be able to come to the table and be vulnerable and transparent and share our lives. Look, there's days, you know it, and I know, and I'm sure Mark knows it too, when we get together, and I can only speak for me right now, is I might get up on that Friday morning knowing that I'm going to be face to face with you guys, knowing that I got something that's bugging me or on my heart or that I need to chat about. And I'm like, I really don't want to talk to them about it, because I know they're going to give me a hard time, or they're going to really give me the tough love or challenge me. And I don't feel like being challenged right now. But we show up anyway. And so that's speaking for me, but I imagine you and Mark go through that too sometimes.
Of course. What did we talk about before this broadcast began? I'm like, yesterday I was sitting there thinking, I'm not going to do this, right? I have a lot going on. I'm not going to do the interview. I'm not going to do the podcast. Is it really worth it? Do I matter? Does it really matter that we have this conversation and share it with other people? Because we're all going through things, and I have a lot on my plate. So do you. But at the end of the day, if we can give back in a big way, by being vulnerable, by sharing what our purpose is, by sharing what our why is, by living our lives to the fullest, like we talked about, doing all we can with all we have been given, there's got to be some good that comes out of that, because you're being vulnerable, you're willing to share something about yourself, and everybody learns from that. And everybody, and maybe it inspires people to do more of that themselves and not walk around worrying about social media, Facebook, Instagram. People spend so much time of their lives on that thing, and it's sucking up every ounce of energy, inspiration, motivation, and heart that they have inside of them, watching what other people are doing and feeling envious or comparison, right? What's the thing about comparison? The thief of all joy. Right? So I'm not going to keep you much longer here, but I do appreciate you sharing your time. Two other questions. So what about your story, or what's the biggest thing about your story of your life you think people can benefit from?
Well, Mark, I got to say one thing. I want to tell. Can I tell a story about you first? I know you're asking me the question. It's your podcast, but
I had a feeling at some point you would be interviewing me, because you're the
No.
podcast.
But that's not a question so much as a story, because you talk about the whole You Matter movement. Let's call it the You Matter movement, and I'm giving Mark kudos here, because he tells some great stories. He interviews a ton of people at his work, and these stories, when these people are able to be vulnerable and get them off their chest, it makes their day, right? And you're doing the interviewing, but you're making their day, and then it's impacting and improving the lives of others. But I just want to share the one story. We were just in Nashville at our little end of the year mastermind, and Mark brought his little You Matter cards, right? And Mark, the other Mark, and I, sometimes we look at Mark Bradinsky and we laugh at him. We laugh at him because he's like a little kid in a candy store, right? And he loves this, and this is who he is, and this is what he does. And a kid, when they're in their environment, they're happy. And Mark is happy most, I think, when he's showing other people that they matter. So we were at the one bar restaurant, and it was a band up there, and there was a lady singer, and the band was still playing, but she stepped off stage because she wasn't singing that song. Hey, Mark runs up like a little kid. He gives her the card, and she looks at it. And I just remember this. And I could see how heartfelt, like, you made her, like, you just made her feel special in that moment. And then she comes up before the next song on stage. She goes, I just got off stage, and I went down there. This young man, Mark Bradinsky, gives me this card. It says, You Matter. He didn't know I was having a bad day today. And she got choked up on the stage, if you remember that. And she just wanted to thank you for making her day. And I thought that was just so special. And that's one of the things I remember from you with this past mastermind event. So I'm sorry I went off tangent there, but I just wanted to let people know your story there. So cool.
Well, thank you. That's part of the stuff. We'll answer your question in a second. But yeah, I hand out these cards to everybody. It's blurred there. You Matter card on the back. It says, you are a miracle, a masterpiece, a hero. And then it has my mission. I'm now positively impacting the lives of 1 billion people. And it just has my name at the bottom. There's no email. There's no website. Because everybody flips the card over. Everybody flips the card over because they think I'm trying to sell them something. They think on the other side of this is some ad or offer or some program, some link, and it's not. It's just out of really the joy and genuine goodness of my heart that I want to make people believe that. And you cannot imagine the stories that happen, people looking at the card. In fact, I read one to Rob, a follow-up to a story that happened last summer that'll be in the book. So I'm writing the You Matter book this year. But it is pretty incredible because people just need those two words. But let's get back to you. All right. So again, what about your story do you think other people can benefit from? What's the biggest thing you think that Rob brings to the world? I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff. If you could narrow it down to one thing, what would be your message?
It's funny you say that because you want to be a speaker, you want to be you want to produce some kind of course material, and everybody says, "What's your message? What's your message? What's your singular message?" And there's two things I think about. When I wrote that book, it's about awareness, right? And the more aware you become of you and everything around you, the more you can grow. You know what your surroundings are. You know the sandbox you're playing in, and so awareness, I think, is foundational. It's foundational to growth. So the more you become aware, the more you're going to grow. It might sound boring. Hey, I wrote a book on awareness. That might sound boring to people, but I just, when you become more aware, things happen. So to the second point is fulfillment. How many people live empty, shallow lives? And like you said on Facebook, right? They have these empty, shallow lives. And if we can learn to live a life where we experience fulfillment, it's an amazing feeling. It's just an amazing feeling to feel fulfilled and know, and that's being in the moment. That's being present. That's being aware when things are happening that fill your cup, that you recognize them. So my story is like, look, I was one of 7 kids, like I said earlier, insecure guy, started working when I was young, paying my way, felt like I always had to prove myself. So and it's who you proving yourself to, others or to yourself. And I think a lot of that is you want to prove yourself to others, but you really want to prove yourself to you. You want to prove your own self-worth to yourself. So I say growing through that and still learning and moving along this journey and knowing that I got a lot more to learn and a lot more moments to fill my cup up. That means everything in the world to me, aside from my family and kids, of course.
Of course, right? That's the foundation of everything, right? The family. But I looked at your Facebook post today about coming out with that book, and talk about that in a second, and then we'll wrap up. But someone said that in the comments on the post that you're doing it, and you and I talked about before this broadcast began. What's the one thing that'll create momentum in your life? Just do it. You're doing the thing. And by doing the thing, you're bringing not information, you're bringing inspiration to other people because they see you doing it and you're touching their lives and you're changing their lives. And every single person matters. Like my 1 billion mission is, I'm not counting it, right? I'm not counting how many people I touch, but just by the sheer drive and persistency of continuing to do this, that you're impacting slowly, and you are too, 1 billion people. And if you can impact 1 billion, the ripple effect will hit all 8 billion people in the world. So appreciate everything that you do, Rob. And do talk about the next book that's coming up. You're part of a bigger conglomerate of authors. So tell us about that book and when it's going to be launched.
Yeah, so the book's called Next Level Your Life. The Next Level Your Life Up, I think it is, if I got that right. Forgive me, Kyle. Anyway, so it's a conglomeration of, I guess, 30, 35, 40 authors that have come together to share their story. So we each have a chapter in the book about how do you next level your life up. And the official launch is Tuesday digitally, and Tuesday, January 24th. I don't know when this podcast will
whenever they're watching it. So it's probably out by then. Yeah. So the book's out, but that's fine.
Yeah. So then the book follows shortly thereafter, and everybody's got their own stories. I don't even know everybody's story in it yet. I don't. I know a couple people that are in it. I know their stories. So, and from that, I mean, one story specifically, it'll blow your mind. And I encourage everybody, when you get a chance, to get this book, read this book. There's nothing in it for me financially. It's just because all proceeds from the launch of the book go to a charity, by the way. And that's pretty interesting too. So nobody's here to, hey, make money off the book. It's to raise money for charity. And yes, exposure does help us individually and personally. So that's what the book is about.
But you're giving back, and that's the big thing. So we can get your book Better Than You Think on Amazon, right? Where can we find your Chiseled podcast?
You can find it on Spotify, Anchor, all Apple Podcasts, pretty much all podcast platforms. It should be available on, and it's Chiseled because we're all work in progress.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you for joining me, Rob. It's an honor to have you as the first guest, 2023 here on the You Matter Show podcast. I knew you'd bring it. You're a great speaker. I know you're going to share yourself and exactly who you are and exactly what you think, and not wear a mask on this. So I knew you'd be a great first guest. And I appreciate your vulnerability. Appreciate you sharing. Of course, I think you matter. I know that you think you matter, which is just as important, right? Which, not in a cocky way, but in a way that you're trying to live your best life and share what it is inside of you to be a light and a beacon to other people. And that's what we're all here for. Because at the end of the day, like you said, if you're lying in your coffin and someone says Rob didn't live up to his potential, you're going to jump out and take care of it. So I don't want to see you do that. I've seen enough horror movies in my life. I'm a big horror movie fan, but I don't want to see that live. But really, thank you for joining. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And of course, I love you, brother. So we'll be talking soon, and I can't wait to release this.
Well, I love you too, pal, and kudos to you for making other people matter and know that you matter as well. And if Mark pulled up a shirt right now, he might have a tattoo that says, I matter.
Maybe. That's coming.
I don't know that firsthand. It could say Captain America for all I know.
We'll talk about that another time. All right. Thank you, Rob.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
See you.